Chicago. One of the most common words used to describe the long, busy baseball season is grind. They play every day for months. Fans, analysts, and writers might know intellectually that no one game during that grind is necessarily worth heartbreak or elation, but emotionally it can still be an intense ebb and flow. The players see it differently. They uniformly focus on maintaining routine and steadiness to get them through the months-long slog, but for those who have been to the playoffs, the way they view the season changes. Namely, they don't look at the standings the same way. True, those April through June games contribute to the season's final outcome, but there's no standings watching going on, at least not until about this point in the season. They tend to agree that right about now is roughly the point in the year when they begin to approach the games differently. Power rankings, no. 1 at the top as great teams jockey for position. I feel like it doesn't really matter until after the break. That's when you get down to the nitty-gritty of the season, so I feel like that's when we need to either hit the OS button or just keep putting it on, John Lester told Sporting News. Lester has 3 World Series rings and pitched in 25 postseason games. He has reached the playoffs with 3 different teams, and you have to go back to 2012 to find an October that he wasn't a part of to some degree. He has been on teams that have practically coasted into the playoffs and teams that have clinched at the very end. In either case, it's not that they ignore where they stand altogether, but they tend to keep a more general perspective. That's not always easy. Indians reliever Andrew Miller said it can be especially tricky at Fenway Park. Miller played for the Red Sox from 2011 to 2014, where the standings are on display right there on the left field wall. Baseball players have a unique challenge, since that left field wall gets updated daily. Because of that, the baseball season is as much a mental grind as it is a physical one. We don't have the contact of, say, hockey or football, maybe not pounding as much as basketball, but there's not too many people who play 162 games in 180 days. Miller said. This is about the point in the season when it gets tougher on both counts. When the second half starts and it's time for a higher gear, Lester said that is usually just something mental. It's hard to do much differently physically, especially halfway into the season. The focus gets turned on a little bit clearer. Lester said. Your mind gets clearer, you get better, and things get a little bit sharper. More, the key to making it to October sometimes, Lester said, teams can reach a point in July or so when they realize that they haven't been playing to their full potential and it's time to make that happen. Just last season, the Cubs went into the All-Star break several games behind the Brewers, only to return from that break and win 8 games in a row and never surrender the NL Central lead. This is the point in the season when remaining zen about the standings is more of a challenge. A 5-game skid turns us into Chicken Little, and a 5-game streak into Rocky Balboa. Clayton Kershaw, who has been in every postseason since 2013 with the Dodgers, said he stays mindful of the standings all year long, but it's about now when he tends to start paying closer attention to what's going on with his division opponents. People are starting to separate themselves. We definitely take notice when people in our division lose, at least I do. I know what's going on, Kershaw told SN. It doesn't really affect what you're doing, but if the Diamondbacks lose, the Rockies lose, or the Giants lose, we like that. Some, like Francisco Lindor, who has been a part of several postseasons, and James Shields, who has 2 World Series starts, say they don't watch the standings until even later. Lindor said not until almost September, and Shields said that the new wildcard format has made that even more the case than in years past. More, fan of the Sandlot, check this out, there are teams that are in it all the way to the end. For example, in 2010, we were 11 games back going into September, and we ended up going to the playoffs in game 162. Shields said. The grind of the season is an immense physical strain, all players will agree, and sometimes when guys on teams with enough of a cushion in their division know that there are going to be more games tacked on to the end, they have to hold back just a little. Lindor said that it might mean more of a willingness to take a day off if Terry Francona calls for it, or learning when there are other small opportunities to conserve some energy. When you're up by 6, you don't have to sprint as fast as you can to first base. Lindor said. When it's not called a grind, the baseball season is often compared to a marathon. So when a player like Lindor knows to hold back just a little, it's because he is pacing himself, not slacking off. Rajai Davis calls the regular season, particularly the games through July or so, a time of enduring. So, like his teammate, he knows that grinding through them means knowing when to ease off of the gas. Sometimes you preserve a little bit your energy, your strength, because you know you have to go out there and do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. Davis said. You don't want to use all your strength in one outing, but you know be consistent as opposed to being just up and down. More, every team's worst October memory, revisited, Kershaw sees it a little differently. Perhaps because of the Dodgers' horrific skid last season that stretched from August 26 to Sept. 11 when they won just a single game, he thinks it's best not to let up at all. That's the debate. Do you just kind of play for the playoffs and rest your guys, or do you just go full steam ahead? I kind of lean toward the full steam ahead approach. Kershaw said. Just let guys play. Give guys days off if they need it, but for the most part, let them play, let them go. Don't take starters out early, let starters go. Just sprint to the finish. Kershaw said he feels like letting up even a little late in the season when the team has a comfortable lead is like going into spring training mode, and it's tough to come out of that when the playoffs come. By now, they have all been at it for a few months, and there are several more to go. Maybe we used to weather this journey in a more detached manner than we seem to now, but sometimes it feels like baseball gets covered and followed like it's college football. No single game is an indictment or validation of a team, and thankfully, at least the men who play the game know that.